Joining me now to talk about this is Congressman Tom Cole of Oklahoma. So, Congressman, my first question to you is, where there is smoke, is there fire?
Well, obviously, there's plenty of people looking at this, and we'll find out, I think, in due course where there is. But count me as skeptical in the extreme that there's much to this story. Not unusual to meet with ambassadors, not unusual for ambassadors of other countries to be busy trying to find out what's going on in, an important country like the United States. And frankly, particularly post-election, there's a lot of relationship building that goes on between the incoming administration and important countries around the world. So, again, I look at this, I just don't see anything sinister here, but, it's fair enough. People want to investigate, we'll investigate.
Congressman, when you meet with ambassadors, do you meet in your office or do you go to the embassy?
Usually in my office. They usually at their request. I don't have any business of my own to transact with an ambassador, so usually they'll come up, they're working the Hill, they usually see a number of members. But again, most of the time it's there. Occasionally it'll be an embassy dinner, you get an invitation and you go in that kind of capacity, but most of my serious meetings have actually been on Capitol Hill.
Congressman, what about the timing of all this? Both of those meetings that Jeff Sessions had with the ambassador happened at spikes in terms of interference from the Russians into our electoral system. That's according to numerous intelligence officials. Are you worried about the timing?
No, I'm not. Frankly, I find it almost inconceivable that Jeff Sessions would be plotting with the Russian ambassador to impact an election, or that he would be in a situation where he could somehow be manipulated. I just don't think that's remotely plausible. There were other people present, so I hear from them at some point if it's necessary. But again, the idea that Americans are actively working with a foreign power to impact an election, I think is far-fetched in the extreme.
If there's nothing to hide, Congressman, why is the White House not being more candid, telling everybody exactly what happened, when they met with whom, what they spoke about?
Well, I think they actually have been pretty forthcoming about this stuff.
Have they been pretty forthcoming? We just played all of those denials a moment ago of the various people in the campaign saying nobody's ever met with Russia over and over again.
I think what they denied, if I can finish my point, was that they were actively colluding in any way. Or, it's not like they're sitting with the Russian ambassador planning voting programs for Wisconsin or something. I mean, this is pretty normal stuff. I had actually asked my scheduler to pull the number of ambassadors I'd met with in the last few months, and it was like 13. So, and they range from people that we have an adversarial relationship. Mostly, though, they tend to be countries we have friendly relationships with. But again, just not that uncommon. And I was chief of staff of the Republican National Committee. I helped arrange, and this is in the 2000 election cycle, helped arrange ambassadors to come to the convention in Philadelphia in that case, so they could see what was happening. I mean, there's a lot of interest in what goes on in United States political campaigns all over the world.
Respectfully, Congressman, they weren't just denying that they were colluding with the Russians. They were denying in many cases that anybody met with the Russians. When it comes to Jeff Sessions, he didn't even mention it during his hearing. When it comes to Michael Flynn, they eventually found out that he spoke with the ambassador, but he didn't just speak with the ambassador to wish him Merry Christmas. He spoke with the ambassador about sanctions and at least alluded to them.
And that's why he ended up with the incoming national security advisor talking in a serious way.
But why would he not be honest about that in the first place?
You'll have to ask him that, but you don't normally blurt out conversations that you're having with other countries without at least talking to them first about putting it in the public domain. But again, I don't see anything sinister here. I just don't. And I see no evidence that the Russians were able to impact the election in any meaningful way. I've been in a lot of elections. I think that's a pretty hard thing to do for any country, particularly at this level. There's so much scrutiny. It's so transparent. It's so decentralized. I find it hard to believe. But again, people have been trying to interfere in American elections since the 1790s. And people care about what happens in this country and want to understand it. So I think that's what's happening here.
Congressman, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but we had Senator Angus King on earlier today on Morning Joe, and we were asking him about, obviously, this controversy. And he said, and he made a very good metaphor, if the Russians had come into this country and gone into the DNC DNC and stolen a hard drive and then left with that hard drive and got out of the country, there would be calls to not only investigate, but to retaliate. That would be a very clear break-in, a very clear breach. Isn't it the same thing when they're doing it electronically?
Well, I think this is a whole new area that does bear looking into. Look, I think, cybersecurity is something we're only just beginning to understand. And frankly, we're at a phase where I think it's easier to play offense in cyber warfare than it is to play defense. So
will you
to that
ask
extent,
the White
I
House
agree with you.
Will we ask the White House to take it very seriously and call for a thorough investigation into exactly what happened so that it can never happen again?
Let the White House do what they want to do. Look, I see no evidence. I know why. I think I understand why Democrats lost the election. And the problem starts with your campaign and your candidate. It doesn't start in Moscow. So I think there is a bit of hysteria here, and I just don't find it convincing. I don't see any evidence of wrongdoing yet. If it emerges, then the appropriate people, will take action. We do have congressional investigations underway, both the Senate Intelligence Committee and the House Intelligence Committee. If somebody thinks there's illegal, then frankly, the Judiciary Committee probably ought to take a look at it. But so far, I see a lot of suggestions and innuendos, but I don't see a lot of compelling evidence that something happened here between the Trump campaign and the Russian government.
Congressman Tom Cole, Republican of Oklahoma.